Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. Welcome to this week's episode of the Flower Lounge. Very excited for today's conversation, talking with Téana David, who was born in Tahiti. She was raised in Canada, and now she's based in New York City, where we met for the first time a few months ago and had an amazing conversation. It was like we just totally hit it off, like, the kind of feeling when you meet someone and you just instantly feel comfortable, like they're your people. So let me tell you a little bit about Téana. She's the director of programming at Deepak Homebase, a sacred salon theater founded by Deepak Chopra and ABC Home's Paulette in 2011. Téana co-curates and produces an ongoing series of more than 75 dynamic events a year. Holy moly. The most events we've ever done are 11, and that was a huge feat. So 75 is incredible, featuring luminaries such as Thich Nhat Hanh, Eve Ensler, Paul Hawken, Vandana Shiva, Robert Thurman, Chase Iron Eyes, and many others. Her purpose is to amplify teachings on the true nature of existence, leading to increased reverence for Mother Earth and equal justice for all beings. She's dedicated to the realization of inner peace as the ultimate path to peace on earth. Music to my ears. Téana is committed to nurturing the wisdom of the body. She leads somatic meditation, herbal medicine, and Pilates retreats in natural settings around the globe with 6 Petals Retreats, a company she founded in 2014 to support a deepening connection to our earth and body. She apprenticed with Susan Weed for 7 months in the wise woman tradition of herbal medicine and incorporates this knowledge into her teaching. She holds an MFA from the Buddhist-inspired Naropa University in contemporary performance, an interdisciplinary approach to creating original works for the stage with a focus on the path of Dharma art, which is defined by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche as creative work that springs from an awakened state of mind. I am so thrilled to have you here, Téana. Thanks for being with us.
Of course. Hi, Katie. Thank you for having me.
So, we usually start out each podcast with a little exercise where you close your eyes and you go back to a time in your childhood when you played around flowers or plants or trees. And just think about what you were doing, who you are with, and see if you can identify a favorite flower or botanical. And then reflect on if that flower or botanical had a personality. How would you describe its personality in 3 words? And just take your time with that. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes and tell us what you were thinking, what you were up to, your favorite, and the 3 words.
Okay. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is just playing in the backyard with my siblings. I'm the oldest of 4. So at this time I was in Alberta, Canada. And it's just so simple when you're a kid, isn't it? It's clovers. It's just the little white clovers. And, just really hanging out with them and maybe picking them or picking off each little segment sometimes, or certainly looking for 4-leaf clovers. I mean, I remember spending hours doing that. And I think the 3 ways I would describe that plant from my childhood perspective was friendly, like kin, like just kind of family, and just sweet. And they're just so everywhere, right? Common. And it's funny that now I do actually work with weeds. I value weeds, and the wise woman tradition of herbal medicine is a lot about working with those things that are right outside your door, and that medicine can be found in your backyard. You don't need to fly it in from another country or adopt another culture's herbal practices if you don't want to. There actually is so much medicine right outside your door. And kind of feels like I've come full circle, because as a child, I think a lot of us know that and just spend a lot of time like literally rolling in the grass, rolling in the clovers, dandelions. I mean, they seem so simple and ubiquitous, but when you're a child, wow, they're friends.
I mean, they're pure magic. All of those plants are just they're such gifts. But before we get into that, I just wanted to say that we find that the flowers you use to describe your childhood favorite will typically describe the way that you bring your greatest gifts into the world. So friendly, like kin, like family, and sweet.
Aw, that's nice.
It's actually really interesting, because that's how I felt when I first met you. It was just like that kind of instant bond. So I'm sure you definitely bring that into your work.
Right back at you, Katie. I felt that too. Like finding a sister, like just a recognition of a friend who's always been, and we were reunited, just so comfortable.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So since you brought up clover, I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about. I'm like excited in my bones. But since you brought up clover, I want to say that you're one of the, inspirations for me to be making red clover infusions each night.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to talk about your work with Susan Weed and the Wise Women traditions and your infusions and how important that is.
Oh, I'd love to. Well, Susan Weed is really one of the grandmothers of the Wise Woman tradition of herbal medicine. She lives in Woodstock, New York, on a farm, Laughing Rock Farm, with her goats. And I had the pleasure of apprenticing with her for over half a year on weekends. And as I said, what she really opened my eyes to is that the things that are right in front of you are oftentimes the very things that you need. And to start looking at plants as allies. They really want to help and support our health and well-being. And it's not just about the phytonutrients that are in them, but it certainly has a spiritual component. You can connect in with the plants on a level that slows your frequency in order to, listen to them, to actually hear them. And in fact, one of our exercises throughout the apprenticeship was to sit with a plant, to find a plant and sit with it consistently, the same plant. And I sort of moved in that time, so I didn't actually stick with the same plant, but I stuck with the same species, and I didn't know the name of it at the time. And that was one of the things, was not to know what it was, just pick one. And it was so wonderful watching it just come out from the earth in a sort of a spiraling way. And it actually had a little sort of film on it. And I watched it being birthed actually from the earth and sort of come out of this membrane. And I never, ever would have noticed that had I not been sitting close to it and really putting my attention and awareness on it in a way that was really, focused and with intention. And I learned so much. I mean, just watching it emerge from the ground in this certain sporadic pattern taught me about the universe. And as it grew, watching it go to seed and its leaves change shape and what were the qualities of the leaf. I just got so intimate with this plant. And then it started talking to me. It actually, because I asked it, what are you helpful for? And it didn't reveal that right away, but after some time, it actually did start just communicating on sort of a cellular level. I received information somehow from the plant. Mm-hmm. And do you know what? It was right on when we were allowed after months to identify the plant that we had been sitting with. It was yellow dock.
Wow.
And what yellow dock had told me was liver. It just kept saying liver to me, liver, liver, liver. And in fact, yellow dock really does support the liver. And that kind of, I don't know, made a real impression on me. And I think the way that we were guided to go about that was just in such a kind, respectful way to the plant. And I wasn't trying to force anything, but just simply sitting next to it, sitting with it, making friends with, really. And it was a slow reveal, certainly, but it all was revealed in the end. And I really cherish that experience. It's not something I ever would have thought to have done over that period of time.
Wow, I love that. I love that you could match it up with, thousands of years of herbalism that would back up the information you got. It's so nice.
Exactly. Special. And in terms of the red clover and infusions, so something that Susan encourages is nourishing herbal infusions. And I do make them every night. She suggests doing red clover one night, comfrey the next night, nettle, linden, oat straw. So these 5 are her main infusions. And I tend to stick with nettle, comfrey, and linden. Those are sort of my 3 that I go back to over and over again. But red clover, yes, very supportive of the female reproductive system, the hormonal system. Red clover has phytosterols in it, which can also be thought of as phytoestrogens, good plant estrogens that support a woman's health. Yeah.
Quick question for you. So is it correct to assume that when you're so let's say you're consuming regular red clover infusions, like I am actually, will those phytoestrogens sort of plug in your cells so that any excess estrogen you have doesn't get to stick around and create havoc?
That's exactly right. That is what I've learned, that if there is any even false estrogens from all the plastics, say, in our world, and they try to get to the receptors and plug in and pretend that they're real estrogen, well, if you are drinking red clover infusion, that will likely be, taken care of, because the red clover will be plugging into those cells instead and supporting a healthy system. Yeah.
Interesting. And your other favorites are comfrey, nettles, and linden. Do you want to talk a little bit about each?
I would love to. Yes. Nettle, first of all, the color of nettle, when you infuse it particularly, it's just this beautiful, vibrant green. And green to me nourishes my soul. The color green just like feeds my heart, feeds my soul. And so there's something about drinking that deep green. And it does have very high concentrations of iron for a plant. So that's very valuable. The other thing that it does is it strengthens the veins. So sometimes as people get older, they find that their veins are not as elastic, and nettle really supports those veins remaining supple and strong. And then it's known as a great hair tonic as well. So I've noticed that with nettle, my hair, it grows quickly and it's thick, and it's just really supportive of that. So that's nettle. And then comfrey is for tissues and connective tissues especially, and muscles and ligaments. So if you're struggling to heal a fracture or a break, you definitely want to uptake your comfrey intake, and it can really support healing. And then you can also, as you're drinking it, make a poultice and lay the comfrey onto the actual fracture to help speed the healing. People really find success with that it will cut healing time in half, both taking it internally and externally. And then linden. Oh, wow. I just, I live in New York, and Prospect Park in Brooklyn is close to where I live. And just about 3 weeks ago, when I left for the West Coast where I am right now, the linden trees were all in bloom. Aww. And it's like honey, just riding my bike or walking through the park. And it's my favorite time of year in the park because, well, first of all, the fireflies are out. So magic sparks everywhere. But the linden, just the scent of it, it's really just euphoric to breathe that in. And so again, a common plant, right? Linden is planted like on college campuses, in parks. It's an easy tree that grows well, looks nice. And so it's often used in public places. And it is an anti-inflammatory, as well as many other things. People use it for headache and flu relief, but on a weekly basis, it helps keep inflammation at bay in the body, supporting a healthy system all around.
So if you are, have maybe say like a wheat sensitivity, but occasionally you just spring for that chocolate croissant, the linden infusion will help with that type of inflammation.
I would say so, for sure. Especially, these are tonics we're talking about. So they are a regular, rhythmical part of your life. Like, can be once a week or twice a week, but it's cumulative and supportive on a sort of a longer term basis. So.
And then back to the comfrey. So let's say you haven't broken anything, but you still bring comfrey into your, like you were saying, long term.
I do. And I'll tell you why, because it's supportive of skin health. I just noticed that the palms of my hands are, soft, and my skin seems to be strong yet soft with the supportive comfrey. And, honestly, with all of these, I listen to just what my body is asking for and what plants are speaking to me. So like red clover and oat straw, for whatever reason, not even that I've had any negative experience, but they've just sort of dropped off right now because I'm drawn to the other three as regulars in my life personally. And I know other friends of mine who have different combinations. And certainly I'll go back into doing all five at some point, that's the most important thing.
And then you recommend doing one herb, like one singular herb each night. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. And we were talking about this earlier, sort of why the one herb, because there are so many beautiful mixtures, like, teas these days. There's so many wonderful combinations that people are doing with herbs. But the reason for the one herb is so that you get to know one plant at a time. It keeps things very clear. And I didn't understand that at first either, but over the years, as I've been working with these infusions regularly, I really, really I get it. Because when I'm making nettle, and that means it's in my hands and it's, in the pot, and I'm stirring it and all of this, I'm smelling it, and then I'm straining it, and then I'm drinking it. And for that 12-hour period that I've been making my nettle infusion, I'm communicating with it. We're coming in contact, and I know nettle now. We have a relationship because it's just been nettle. And same with comfrey, and same with linden. So just that my teacher describes herself as a simpler, and that she likes to work with one plant at a time. And that really resonates with me. It feels somehow grounded and just clear and simple.
Yeah, it's funny because I started doing the infusions and I was doing mixtures, and then
Mm-hmm.
I thought of you in our conversation, and I was thinking, yeah, she only does one herb. I wonder, that's so interesting. So I started doing singles, and I agree. I actually like that a lot better. It's simpler, and even just in terms of preparation, it's just
Right.
one simple thing. You don't have to measure out quantities or
Yeah.
figure out,
Yeah.
and you can just like really deeply appreciate that one plant and what it's doing for you.
That's a good way of putting it. Really deeply appreciate. Yeah.
And then if you're alternating a different one each night, well, then you're getting, right, like you said, a week's worth of all kinds of yummy plants, but it's just a really simple practice. Do you want to take us through your evening practice of the overnight
Mhm.
infusions, how you do it and what you...
Sure. Yeah. And just before we go on, because you just really inspired me about the clarity of the one at a time, and yet you're getting them all, over a week or whatever period of time. It just reminds me of strings on a guitar, and that each one is a specific note. It is that note, only that note, but the five strings together, make harmony and get to be played together. But it depends, the tuning depends on each string being really itself.
You know what else too? As you were talking, I was thinking so in the flower essence world, we often do combinations. So people who are just starting taking flower essences, we give them combinations of flowers, bouquets to sort of nourish and surround them with a whole bunch of support. But when people want to take it deeper and really go very deep and start to unravel some of the deeper patterns, we just simplify to one flower at a time. So
Mm.
it's an interesting thought to think too, like, because when you talk about making your infusions, you're really talking about, you said, connecting with that plant for 12 hours. That's like a deeper way. I mean, that's different from like making a cup of tea.
It really is. Yeah, that's interesting, Katie. Yeah, when it's time to go deeper, things kind of simplify and focus in a way
Mm-hmm.
to like tune in
Right.
to one frequency. Yeah, so the practice of nourishing herbal infusions is pretty much a quart of water to an ounce of herb. And it's really important that that measurement is clear. So, especially with the ounce of herb, you don't want to shortcut that. It's not like, oh, it's about a cup. No, you really do need something to weigh it with. And every batch that you might get, say from Frontier Organic Herbs or wherever you get your organic herbs, it could be cut a little differently. So we want all of the minerals if you're going to make it right. So what I do is boil some water on the stove, turn it off, and just let it cool a little bit. And then pour it into, well, first I put the herb in the bottom of the mason jar. So I'll put an ounce of nettle in the bottom of the mason jar, and then pour the hot water all the way to the top. I'll take like a knife or a chopstick and just make sure that the herb is really, submerged in the water. And then I will lid that mason jar, put it on the counter, and let it sit for 4 to 10 hours. I know that's a big range, but sometimes if I'm doing it in the afternoon, I might only have 4 hours, and that's kind of the minimum. That's okay. But mostly I will do it overnight. So that's the first part. And, with the mason jars, I've heard a couple times that if the water's too hot, they'll crack. So that's why I say just let the water cool a little bit.
In my experience, if the water is too hot when you put on the lid, it's really hard to get the lid off. It's
Ah,
just like
that too. Yes. And then I heard this trick. Somebody said put a metal spoon or a metal something in the mason jar. It will take the heat out of the water.
oh, that's a great
And
idea.
I know I haven't tried that myself, but I thought that was pretty interesting. Like, and so then fast forward to the morning, and okay, there's my mason jar, and I'm gonna undo the lid, which can be difficult, but not usually. Undo it, and then I have a sieve. You really need a sieve rather than like a pasta strainer. Needs to be fine mesh, and I put it over a bowl, and so straining the liquid out. And I love this part, is like squeezing the herb. So it's quite important to just get your hands in that nettle and squeeze out all of the liquid from the nettle into the bowl that you're collecting it in. And then what I do is usually rinse out that same mason jar, put the infusion back in there and stick it in the fridge. Nettle, I love hot as well. Not everybody does, but it tastes like, I don't know, hot chocolate or like Ovaltine or something somehow. Yeah, like this alchemy that happens with nettle. I adore it, but some people don't like it hot. They like it over ice or just room temperature. So you figure out, what you like. And actually with nettle in the summer, I just find it kind of the most thirst quenching of all of them. If it's a really hot day, I am reaching for some iced nettle, and just really quenches my thirst and feels so just nourishing on a cellular level. So that's what, for all of them, that's what you would do. Now, linden is a little exception because it's so fluffy that we usually just use a half ounce of herb to a quart of water. So all of them are an ounce to a quart, except linden, you would just use a half ounce.
And so do you have a little scale in your kitchen?
I do.
Weigh it each time?
Yep, that's what I do. And linden, just to be clear, you'd want to get the, it's called leaves and flowers, because if you get cut and sifted linden, it can kind of get goopy. So you want, like, it looks like when you just pick off the tree. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I have been putting the jars outside on the ground, like on the earth.
Ooh.
And there's something about that that's really compelling, like absorbing all the earth aura energy, and it's almost like it makes it even more silky or something.
Ooh, I really like that, Katie. I'm going to try that. And it makes me think about, it's also absorbing the sky and the space around
Stars.
it. Yeah, like I want to put it out under the full moon. Mm-hmm. Wow, all right. Yes.
Wow, so fun.
Mm-hmm.
So those are your three mainstays. Are there any other herbs or tonics that you've occasionally liked to infuse?
Thrown in there? Yeah. For a while I was foraging violet leaves.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, which can be supportive of all sorts of things, but bone health. This was a while ago. And you need to forage a lot. So just using mindful practices of wildcrafting, of course. So, I know somebody who wild forages a bit of every plant and then adds it to the herbs that she orders online. So she might, grow some nettle in her garden and then dry it. And if she was going to use her nettle for all of her infusions, it would go really quickly. So she buys her organic nettle from an herb company and then just adds a little bit of her own nettle to every infusion. Isn't that nice? I thought that was a perfect way to incorporate stuff that you've grown or foraged into the infusions.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of different health practices. So I want to make sure that we talk about your movement practices, because you have a really unique approach to Pilates. And I wondered if you wanted to talk about your movement and your inside out practices.
I would love to. Yeah, sort of switching gears a little bit. And yet it's all about nourishing, taking care of the whole body from the inside out, really. And so, yes, I teach Pilates, but I teach it through this lens of somatics. And somatics really means feeling the body from the inside out, having a felt sense experience of the body. So instead of sort of watching a teacher do a movement and you copying it, it's really about being guided into your inner sensations and moving from a place of kinesthetic delight, as one of my teachers says. So,
oh, I love that.
Right? Kinesthetic delight. What feels needed and supportive in this moment? How could you feel your body, move your body in a way that would really just be helpful to your being? And so it's interesting to guide people through that lens instead of more of a technical way. And I so enjoy using Pilates as sort of a scaffolding, because it's Joseph Pilates, what he brought into the world is an excellent offering that allows us to connect into our centers, the very center of our beings, both our sort of our hara area around our navel center, but also vertical center, an awareness of the spine from top to bottom. And so there's that can, once we really find our center in both of those senses, I find that we walk through the world in a different way. And there's a sense of our backspace, an awakening of the backspace that allows us to be present in a three-dimensional way in every moment, rather than just, the front of our bodies, where most of our senses are located, so we can get kind of front, oriented. But how about the whole back? And that's really where, like animals in a herd, they sense through their whole bodies to stay together in the pack, right? So if we have that opportunity also to feel through the back of our bodies. And so I like to awaken that. And I studied something called experiential anatomy, which means that you learn about all the systems in your body, not just the bones and muscles, which you may in a standard anatomy class, but the organs and the glands and the fascia, and also the fluid systems of the body. And once you start to feel those places in your body, you move differently. And for example, like the liver, right? I'm touching my liver right now. It's on the left side of my body, but it goes in towards the center of sort of my breastbone. And I can wake it up through touch, which I'm doing right now. But I can also start to move from my liver and move it around, sort of front, back, side. Oh yeah, there are sides to the liver, and there's a back. What in the world does the back of my liver feel like? And, when you've never thought about that before, it's, first of all, it's difficult to sort of tune in and feel like, am I feeling the liver? I don't know. But to just trust that, and using visualizations and using plain anatomy books. What does the liver look like, to educate yourself? Oh, okay, it's this heavy and it's here in the body. That can be so helpful to visualize. And then you can also sound into the liver and, stretch, and all sorts of ways to wake it up. And then, doing that with all of the organs, especially, I'll focus on the organs right now. Like, these are what fill us up, right? These are what give us our substance. Without them, we would be just shells, pretty much. And why don't we know about this from a young age? Why are we not taught about what's inside of us?
It's fascinating too, right?
It's so fascinating. I became completely invested and addicted to learning about as much of this kind of anatomy as possible. And so I bring this into my Pilates teaching because I just have the calling. I'm called to awaken all of these inner sensations in anyone who comes to study with me or be on retreat with me. It's benefited me so much. And just really, honestly, just feeling my sense of self and my place in the world, because I have a relationship now with everything that's inside of me. And I know this sounds kind of esoteric, but it's hard to find words. But I think you get it, and I think your listeners will get it.
I know I talk a lot about is simply just by putting your awareness on something, it shifts. It's like when you're doing any mindfulness practice, you put your awareness on something, it shifts just by the sheer fact of putting your attention on it. So I can only imagine that if you are in this moment tuning into your kidneys, even if you don't really, know much about anatomy, it's like, well, okay, no, my kidneys are in my back, under my ribs. And if you just simply by putting your awareness is that already shifting the health and wellness and vitality of those organs. And I would
Ooh.
assume that, of course, it is. So it sounds to me like your work is profound in that it's really just asking us to heighten our awareness of all of the things that make up us, right?
Katie, you're so right on. Just putting our awareness somewhere wakes it up. It brings it into the light. It's like in meditation, working with our minds. And can we just bring everything into consciousness so that we become aware of, some habits or anything that might be sort of under the radar? If we can just shine some light and bring it all into full awareness. And so I take that into the whole body. I want to bring every cell into complete consciousness so that there's nothing that's left behind in dark unconsciousness. It's all available. It's all available to be awakened. And in fact, can I read something right now? Because it's
please.
sitting next to me and it's Lao Tzu. And I just came across it the other day and yes, I get it. So I want to share it. So he says, if you want to awaken all of humanity, then awaken all of yourself. If you want to eliminate the suffering in the world, then eliminate all that is dark and negative in yourself. Truly, the greatest gift you have to give is that of your own self-transformation. And especially the first line, if you want to awaken all of humanity, then awaken all of yourself. I'm kind of taking that pretty literally, like awaken all of the physical parts of yourself, because your mind is in every cell. Each cell contains your whole self, and I think probably the whole universe too. So this is kind of a micro way of us perhaps helping the collective awaken. At least that's my theory that I'm trying on and have been called to.
I'm 100% behind that theory.
Good.
I love that quote. It's so beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It's the philosophy we subscribe to. I mean, it's the only way to go, right?
I think so. But let me ask you, Katie, because you have so much experience exploring this realm of self-transformation and self-care. And sometimes I get doubtful and I sort of think, oh gosh, are we just supporting sort of a me? I better help myself and be really well, and then the world will be better. And is it too self-focused or something? I mean, really where I'm going with this is when we awaken all of ourselves, we are called to service. And that aspect of helping the greater alivens there. But what do you have to say about that? Like the self-work and that connection to helping all of us?
Well, I think there's a big difference between self-indulgence to the extent of that's all I'm doing versus the kind of self-care that would include, for example, me making an inventory of my greatest weaknesses and then being motivated to shift that. Or look, is there anywhere I'm out of integrity, even in the most subtle of ways? And then shift that. Like that's the kind of, like your quote, that's the kind of service and self-awareness that changes the world.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Not that self-indulgence is bad, but I know what you mean. It's like, at what point does self-care become self-absorption?
Yes, that's the question I'm asking. And I, like you, I know in my heart that if it's offered with a pure heart, and like you said, if it's really about awareness so that we can be more conscious in the world, which please, it's going to help if we're more conscious in the world.
And that's the key word. I mean, I personally believe that anything that brings us closer to an awareness state brings us closer to our own state of awakening and enlightenment. So when you're having your clients be aware of their organ systems and their body and their backspace, you are encouraging them to get into an instantaneous state of awareness, which is bringing them closer to their awakening versus, something that might sound like self-care, but then takes us away from our awareness. So, I'm trying to think of an example besides like crazy, psychedelics that make us, that bring us away from awareness, or I'm trying to think of a more mundane example. But I think that's a good.
Well, like say like over focus on your diet in a way that would be, just so over the top, maybe.
Good one. So it's like, I only will have green juices and I'm only going to eat quinoa. And you get so rigid that you lose touch with what your own body wants. Maybe your body is craving something, but that's not on your list of a perfect example. So I think that's just a really good gauge, is whatever brings us closer to awareness is moving us forward. It's so simple, right?
When you say it, yes, it sounds simple. Beautiful.
So I heard you mention your retreats, and I know we talked about your retreat in Costa Rica. Do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, I would like to share. So this year, this March, 2018 March, will be my 5th year taking a group of people to a very sort of off the grid organic farm lodge in the mountains of Costa Rica, right above the Tenorio volcano. And actually, it's quite far north. You can see Lake Nicaragua from a certain part of the property. And gosh, how do I even talk about that experience? It's a week. It's a full 7 days. And we do a day of silence midweek. And so it's kind of different from, I think, a lot of retreats that I'm seeing out there that are go, 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 and like very full of activity. Why are you laughing?
I'm just laughing because it's so similar to what we're doing, just in a different place.
I noticed that because we talked a little bit, and I looked at your website. I was like, wow, yes, that's totally my angle as well. My intention. We're so similar in what we want to offer and have to offer, which is really, gosh, a slowing down and calming of the nervous system. A lot of the work I do is actually about calming the nervous system so that we can listen to what's actually being said inside of us and around us. And so this experience in the mountains with a beautiful river running through it that you can swim in, and there's horses grazing, and the organic rice, organic black beans being grown on the land and harvested in front of you, pineapples, gosh, any fruit you can think of. And it's simple. There's a simplicity about that land, and the lodge itself and the buildings, they look like they've sprung from the earth. So they're not imposed on it. It's such an organic feeling. And it's sort of like when I'm not there, I wonder if it really exists, because it's like stepping through a portal into a different dimension. Actually, I feel that the vibrations there they're almost otherworldly. It's just a different reality, and time feels different. And so we give thanks before our meals in a Thich Nhat Hanh blessing way, just taking time before, especially dinner, to breathe and recognize the clouds and the earth and the rain and all of the human touch that has been involved in bringing the food to our table to nourish us. So little mindfulness moments are sprinkled, introduced and sprinkled throughout the entire retreat. Pilates and movement offered twice a day, meditation every day, just simple sitting with the breath meditation, walking meditation, and then this day of silence that can be challenging for some people. It's really, you're quieting the chatter and are left with yourself and with the birds and the morpho butterflies, these big blue butterflies that tumble down the river. They literally just they're so large. They're just tumbling in the currents and the winds. And It's really out of a fairy tale. Yeah. And, there is some yoga offered, but it's mostly about reconnecting with nature and reconnecting with your breath and waking up all of the body. So that's what I offer. That's what I have to offer. And I know, it's probably not sexy enough for some folks, but it's what I have to offer.
This is right up my sexy alley here. It's like,
well, it turns me on for sure.
Totally. I think at some point we should make an intention that one day you come to the retreat that we do in Costa Rica, and one day I go to your retreat. I think we should do a little
let's do that. I've been thinking that already, so we need to talk.
Oh, what are you doing in November?
Yeah.
Maybe you should come.
Oh my
okay.
gosh.
So yours is March of 2019, and people can find more information about your retreat at sixpetalretreats.com.
Yeah, it's 6 petals, plural. 6petalsretreats.com.
Great. And then one last thing I really wanted to ask you about, because I'm a huge fan of Trungpa, and you mentioned him in your bio. Do you want to talk a little bit more about your Dharma art path and how that affects your life today?
Yeah. So in 2009, 2007 actually, I went to Naropa University to do a master's in something called contemporary performance, which is making original works for the stage that spring from this awakened state of mind. And I didn't really know, I was already a practicing Buddhist in my 20s, but I wasn't on a particular path. And I knew, though, if I was going to get a master's, that I would want it to be just intentional and support direction that I already felt I was going in with theater, which is just like, how can I contribute new meaningful works that, I don't know, might be social justice commentaries or investigate issues that need to be brought into the collective, that need to be viewed, that we can all gather together and watch something that will hopefully move the needle, or, at least incite some dialogue and some awareness. And this program was just that. And what I loved about it wasn't just pegging you into like, well, you're an actor, so you're just going to be an actor in the program. It recognized the multifacetedness of all of us, that most of us, we weren't just one thing. We weren't just directors, we weren't just actors. And certainly, even though acting had been my focus, I was not. I was also a writer and a producer and a choreographer and a dancer and a filmmaker. And so what's a degree that could incorporate all of those passions of mine so that I could create using all of those mediums? And not only that, we would meditate every morning for a half hour or so before we went into our day of movement studies, which was also meditative in its own way, as I spoke about earlier, the deep somatic work, and voice that was not just your like ta-ta-ta, ba-ba-ba, ga-ga-ga theater training, speech training. It was Roy Hart vocal work, this extended vocal range of getting into the nooks and crannies of your voice, the ugly sounds, like making ugly sounds, and being okay with that, and waking up more of yourself by understanding all of who you are. And you get really messy, really free.
Love that.
Yeah. So sort of out of the ordinary, right? Like, wow, this is possible, and this can expand my range as an artist and as a communicator. And so the Dharma art, the first day of school, we were given the Dharma art letter, which Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche wrote at the founding of Naropa in, I believe, 1974, around there. Wow. And what I love about him, he was a Buddhist teacher who recognized the value of the arts in education. And so his school from the get-go had a dance program and ikebana, flower arranging, and writing, poetry. The Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics was kind of how Naropa started, I believe, as a summer writing program. So how cool that you could, study art in a contemplative way. And do you know what's interesting, Katie? There was no feedback for the whole 2 years. Your teachers never told you, I liked that, or I thought that was strong, or you might want to, nothing. And
Wow.
I was antsy at the time. You want to know, are you doing a good job? Is what you're learning in class integrating into your work? But really, really little feedback. And their intention was just that you would cultivate the ability to self-reflect and just know within yourself what was landing in your heart and landing for the audience. And were you making art from a pure-hearted place or not? That you were left to determine the quality of your offering. And even though for those 2 years I struggled with that non-confirmation, pretty much as soon as I graduated, I was so thankful, because I had a sense of self in my art that I didn't need anybody else's approval anymore. It actually totally took that away. That
Dissolved
thing.
it.
It dissolved it. It completely dissolved it without me even really knowing it. That was happening.
Oh my God, that's so skillful. I wish every high school student in the United States could have those 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine? Like right after as part of your curriculum?
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
So Chogyam Trungpa, I'm grateful that he started Naropa, because I got to experience it for 2 years, and I know that it influences my being and my teaching and my sharing every single day. Things that I learned there. So I'm very grateful.
I want to go.
I know. I want to go back.
Every person should have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. And okay, I have two more questions for you, and then we can wrap up. Okay, so the next question is, where do you see pure-heartedness and alignment showing up in your life?
Pure-heartedness. That's kind of a new term that I'm using, I guess, but I like it. Pure-heartedness. Alignment. I think alignment for me is just, it's like the Tao. It's being in the flow of the mystery of all there is, of the natural order of the universe, the intelligence of the universe. It's about recognizing that we, like I said, like our cells hold the universe. And if we can just maybe almost like unstick things that are just hindering that awareness and alignment, that's really just all we have to do, is recognize our inherent kinship with the universe. There's a Native American tradition, I'm not sure which, but it refers to what I would call the Tao or source as the sacred wind. And I love that, because sacred wind, it's like, it's all around us, it's the space around us, but it's also inside of us as the breath. And so this really easy relationship of source inside of us is, for me, it comes down to the breath that we take in, we breathe in the universe, in every moment. And that relationship is, we don't need to do anything to cultivate it except be aware. So that's alignment to me. Yeah.
It's like anything, right? It's like stripping away so we can get to the innate perfection. It's like it's like Sakyamuni saying, if we were aware of every single breath from the moment we woke up until the moment we fell asleep, we'd be fully enlightened, knowers of the past, present, future. We'd have eradicated all of the disturbing emotions. And it's like, it's that simple. Not easy, but so simple.
So true.
The sacred wind. I love that. And then what about pure-heartedness? What does that mean to you personally?
Yeah. It's about intention And sort of like a sort of crass, gross example is just, instead of looking to meet people in order to, I don't know, network or climb some sort of ladder or something, there's also a way in which you can just be so delighted to meet people because you just want to recognize and celebrate each other's humanity, and just find your sisters and brothers on the path in this world. And so even though outwardly the two things could look the same, say going to a social gathering, if someone perhaps is not aligned with their pure-heartedness, it's coming from a different place. You know, the intention of meeting people or whatever could be something else. Or if it's pure-hearted, it could be this other thing about recognizing each other's humanity and simply being in the flow. If things are meant to unfold in a certain way, they will. And I you know what? Yes. So pure-heartedness and being in the flow, I think, I know, go together. And I think it's difficult to drop into the flow, which is the Tao to me, without a pure heart. And cultivating a pure heart, which I think could be a daily practice, really a moment-to-moment practice, actually, just making sure that you know, our intentions are pure. That keeps us in the flow. And gosh, when we're pure-hearted and in the flow, magic happens.
And I imagine it's contagious.
Oh, I think so. I'm really inspired by pure-hearted beings such as yourself that I come across and recognize and get to be in the flow with.
Thank you. Yeah, it's such a pleasure knowing you. Okay, one last little question. So what is the one thing you find yourself repeating often? Like, what's the wisdom that is bubbling up from you recently? Some insight.
I'm trying to think about things that I always say, you know, quotes that I always quote, because we all have those kind of like on repeat. And
or like, what's alive right now for you?
You know, it's what's really alive for me is what we've delved into a little bit before, which is this theory that I'm trying out in my own being and body and in my clients' beings, which is, if we bring every part of our physical selves into the light of awareness, does that expand our hearts, minds, souls into being more fully available to the collective awakening. So that's what I'm really alive with. And that's my investigation. I certainly don't have the answers, but I do have the questions. And that is something that I think of every day. It's live the questions. So actually Rilke said, live the questions. And that resonates with me so much, because we can just rest in curiosity, be in curiosity. And that takes me to being curious rather than judgmental. And when I find myself in moments of judgment, I just remind myself, let's be curious instead of judgmental. And that turns things around right away. I have really benefited from that.
I love all of these practices. So great. Practices that we can all adopt. And I love that everything we talked about is they're really all practices that you can do every day. The herbal infusions, from body awareness to all of the practices that you've just mentioned.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that's really my way in the world. It's a daily affair. I'm just somebody who likes to keep my feet on the ground. I certainly have a big earth connection, and I feel safe when I'm grounded. And these practices ground me. and the dailiness of them, the regularity of them, really just help me feel that I'm staying on my path. And yeah, so that's kind of what I'm about.
Love it. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
And yeah, gosh, Katie, my pleasure. I'm so happy we met a few months ago and whirled into this friendship. And I really honor what you're doing in the world and feel such a resonance with what you're offering on such a soul sister level. It's kind of wild, actually, how much, I feel we share so much in common about our way in the world, or the way that we see things. And it's really special. I love that being reflected back to me through someone as wonderful as you. And yeah,
it's really rare. It is so interesting. We could talk for days.
Yep.
So again, for the listeners, if you would like more of Téana, visit her website at sixpetalsretreats.com. And thank you again for being with us.
Green blessings. Flower blessings.
Thank you again so much for listening to the Flower Lounge podcast. Wanted to let you know we're super excited. We just launched our very first crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo. Any contribution helps, even if it's $1. We just would love to see your name on the contributor list. It warms my heart to know that there are so many people contributing to this vision that we have. You can check that out on our website and find the crowdfunding campaign from there at the top of the page. And we have a retreat coming up in Costa Rica in November. There are only a few spots left. If any of you want to take a last-minute trip, you need a week of luscious downtime on the beach, in the jungle. I also just invited Erin Borbet. She'll be offering one-on-one acupuncture treatments while we're there, as well as Robin Sandomierski, who will be offering luminary intuitive sessions. And it's going to be an amazing week. So if you're interested in that, check out earthaura.com. And we thank you so much for your support.
Thank you so much for listening to The Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard, or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at LOTUSWEI.com.